In the pale, quiet glow of the hospital room, Elara 72 sat beside the man who had been her world for half a century. Her fingers gently wrapped around Arthur's 75 hand, the same hand that had held her during their first dance, steadied her during storms, and carried their love through 50 unforgettable years. Tonight, that familiar hand felt colder, softer, as if time itself was slipping away from its grip. The steady beep of the heart monitor echoed like a distant clock counting down moments she wasn't read. Why to lose? Elara leaned closer, brushing her thumb over Arthur's knuckles the way she used to when they were young and fearless. Arthur's eyelids trembled before lifting slowly. His eyes, though tired, still held that same warmth that had made her fall in love with him all those decades ago. He gave her hand the faintest squeeze, a gesture filled with memories only they shared. Elara, he breathed, his voice fragile but sincere. There's something I've carried inside me for 50 years. A truth I buried, even from you. In the sterile, cold light of the hospital room, Elara 72 sat holding the hand of her husband of 50 years, Arthur 75. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor was the only sound cutting through the heavy silence. This was the hand that had held hers, supported hers, and worked for their family for 5 decades, but today, it felt frail and cool beneath her touch. 50 years. Half a century. She looked at his face, now thin and etched with the deep lines of age and illness, and she saw the ghost of the man she had met at a university dance. Arthur, her Arthur. He had been so vibrant, with a laugh that could fill a room and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was and always had been her rock, the most honest, dependable man she had ever known. Their life hadn't been a grand fairy tale, but it had been theirs. It was built on quiet mornings, shared cups of tea, raising two wonderful children, Liam and Sophie, who were now grown with families of their own. It was built on surviving the lean years when his small accounting firm was just starting, and celebrating the good years, when they could finally afford to travel. It was a tapestry woven with shared jokes, comfortable silences, and the unwavering certainty that they were in this, whatever this was. Together you're staring, a weak voice rasped. Pulling Elara from her memories, she blinked, a soft, sad smile touching her lips. I'm just remembering my love, remembering the dance. Arthur's eyes, clouded with pain medication but still holding that familiar spark, managed a faint twinkle. You were wearing a blue dress. You spilled punch all over my shoes. Elara chuckled, a wet, thick sound. And you said it was the best thing that could have happened to you. It was, he whispered, his grip tightening ever so slightly on her hand. Elara, a sudden shift in his tone, a new urgency, made her lean closer. The air in the room felt suddenly colder. The doctor's words from that morning echoed in her ears. It's a matter of hours, maybe a day. Make him comfortable. Say what you need to say. She had been preparing herself for the crushing weight of grief, for the emptiness of a life without him. She had not been preparing for this. What is it, Arthur? Are you in pain? Should I call the nurse? No, nurse. He took a ragged, shuddering breath, a feat that seemed to cost him all his remaining strength. His eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time in 50 years, Elara saw something other than love or pain in them. She saw a fear, and deeper still, a profound, soul-deep guilt. Elara, he whispered, his voice a dry rattle. I have to tell you something. A truth I've kept buried. For 50 years her heart stuttered. A cold dread, sharp and unfamiliar, pricked at her skin. A truth. Arthur, you're scaring me. What is it? He closed his eyes for a long moment, as if gathering the courage to leap from a great height. When he opened them, a single tear escaped the corner of his right eye and tracked slowly into his graying hair. Before us, there was someone else. Elara's brow furrowed. Of course there was, darling. We both had dates, young sweethearts. That's not a secret. No. He shook his head, a minimal, painful movement. Not like that. A wife, Elara, my first wife. The words hung in the sterile air, nonsensical. Elara felt a strange, hysterical laugh bubble in her chest. My love, you're confused. The medication, it's making you. I'm not confused, he insisted, his voice gaining a sudden, desperate clarity. Her name was Sarah. We were young, so young. A stupid, whirlwind thing before I even met you. Elara sat back, the blood draining from her face. A first wife. This was impossible. They had filled out countless forms together, mortgages, bank loans, passports. Spouse's name, Elara Vance. Marital status, married. There was no space for a Sarah Arthur. What are you saying? She whispered, her hand growing numb in his. You were divorced when we met. This was it. The final terrible confession. Arthur turned his head, unable to look at her. The monitor beeped. Beep, beep. Each sound was a hammer blow against the sudden, roaring silence in her ears. That's the truth, Elara. He choked out, the words tearing from his throat. We were never divorced. Elara's world, built so carefully over 50 years, fractured. The man she had loved, the life she had lived, the very foundation of her identity as his wife. It was all a lie. What? The word was barely a breath. She disappeared. Arthur continued, the confession now pouring out of him like a ruptured dam. We had a fight, a terrible fight. I was 24, I packed a bag and left. I went to a different city. The city where I met you, Elara. I tried to find her, to serve papers, but she was gone, vanished. After a while, I stopped looking. He turned back to her, his eyes swimming with desperate, dying regret. Elara, I met you, and I loved you so much. I was a coward. I was afraid to lose you. So I just started over. I committed bigamy, Elara. He squeezed her hand, his last reserve of strength flowing into that one pathetic gesture. Our marriage, he wept, the sound thin and reedy. It was never legal for 50 years. I've been living a lie, and I've made you live it with me. Elara said nothing. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The hand she was holding no longer felt like Arthur's. It felt like the hand of a stranger. The rhythmic beep of the monitor was the only thing tethering her to the room as the floor fell away from beneath her, dropping her into a cold, dark abyss of 50 stolen years. The fracture of a life world didn't stop. The heart monitor didn't falter. The fluorescent lights didn't dim. Outside the hospital window, Elara could hear the distant wail of a siren, a testament to a world that was, impossibly, still moving forward. But her world had shattered into a million silent pieces. Not legal, she repeated, her voice sounding alien to her own ears. It was dull, lifeless, bigamy. The word was ugly, a word for newspaper scandals and courtroom dramas. It wasn't a word for her life. It wasn't a word for Arthur, the man who meticulously balanced their checkbook every month, the man who cried during the father-daughter dance at Sophie's wedding, the man who read stories to his grandchildren with silly voices. Elara, please, Arthur begged, his voice cracking. Say something, yell at me, hit me, anything. Elara slowly, mechanically, withdrew her hand from his. The absence of his touch, a touch she had known for 50 years, felt like a sudden, cold amputation. She stood up, her legs unsteady. She walked to the window and stared out at the city lights, blurry and distant. 50 years. She wasn't Elara Vance, his wife. She had never been Elara Vance. Who was she? Our children, she said, her back still to him. Her voice was flat. Liam, Sophie, their names, their legitimacy, they are mine, Elara ours. Arthur insisted desperately. That part is real. All of it was real. My love for you. It was the only real thing I had. Don't. She snapped, whirling around. The sudden movement sent a jolt of pain through her, but it was nothing compared to the ice in her veins. Don't you dare talk about love, not now. Not after this. She looked at the man in the bed. This stranger, who is she? Elara demanded. This Sarah, where is she? I don't know. He whispered, seeming to shrink against the pillows. I told you I left. I tried. For a few years. I hired a private investigator. He said she'd moved away, maybe left the country. He couldn't find her. And then you and I. We were so happy. We were starting our family. And I just let it go. I told myself she must be dead. You told yourself? Elara's voice rose, cracking with a sudden, surging wave of betrayal that was so potent it tasted like bile. You hoped she was dead? So you could what? Live your lie without inconvenience? She began to pace the small room, her hands clenched at her sides. My God, Arthur. My entire life. When we bought our first house. The mortgage application, you lied. When we filed our taxes, every single year. You lied. Our wedding day. Her breath hitched. She remembered the small church, the white dress her mother had helped her pick, the look in Arthur's eyes as she walked down the aisle. A sob, sharp and violent, ripped from her chest. Those vows. To have and to hold. In truth and in faith. They were all nothing. She cried, the tears finally coming, hot and angry. You stood there in front of God, in front of our families, and you defiled it. You defiled me. I loved you, he choked out. I loved you so much I couldn't bear to lose you. I was a coward. I know, Elara. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. She laughed, a harsh, broken sound that scared her. You're sorry. You're dying, Arthur. You don't get to be sorry and then just leave. You get to rest. You get to be free of it, but me? She gestured wildly around the room, at the monitors, at the door, at the life that waited for her outside it. I have to live with this. What about the house? How are my house is it? What about the accounts? The will? Is any of it mine? Am I your widow? Or am I just the woman you lived with for 50 years? The questions hung in the air, sharp and terrible. These were practical, ugly problems that had no place in a room of grief. But they were real. He had made them real. Arthur had no answer. He could only weep, his frail body shaking with a different kind of agony now. The agony of a soul laid bare to late. The door to the room creaked open. Their son, Liam 48, peeked his head in. He looked tired, his eyes red-rimmed. Mom? Dad, I just came to. Is everything all right? I heard shouting. Elara froze. She looked at her son, the child of a fraudulent marriage. The shame was so sudden and overwhelming it buckled her knees. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. How could she tell them? How could she tell her children that their entire family, their entire history, was built on a criminal's lie? She took a deep, shuddering breath, composing her face into a mask of simple grief that felt like a betrayal in itself. She couldn't destroy them. Not while their father was. No, darling, she said, her voice miraculously steady. Everything is fine, your father. He was just restless. We were just talking. Liam looked between his parents, sensing the electric tension in the room. But he was too exhausted, too steeped in anticipatory grief, to question it. He nodded. Okay, Sophie's grabbing a coffee. We'll be right outside. He closed the door, leaving them once again in the suffocating intimacy of the room. Elara turned back to Arthur. The anger had momentarily subsided, replaced by a vast, echoing emptiness. The man in the bed was dying. The man she loved was already dead. He had died the moment he spoke the name Sarah. Arthur began, his voice fading, the exertion of the confession and the argument having drained his last reserves. I need to tell you where the papers are. What papers? She asked, her voice hollow. In my study, the old desk, the false bottom, in the top drawer. His breathing was getting shallower. The monitor's beeps seemed to be slowing, spacing out. Everything, her letters, the investigator's reports, my original marriage certificate. He had kept it all. For 50 years, he had kept this box of poison hidden in the heart of their home. Elara, he gasped, his eyes wide, pleading. He was starting to panic, fighting for air. Please, Elara, forgive me. The monitor spiked, a long, piercing alarm. Beep, Arthur. Elara's numbness shattered, replaced by raw panic. Arthur, no. Nurses burst into the room. A doctor followed. Ma'am, you need to step outside. Code blue, ma'am, now. Elara was pushed, stumbling, into the hallway, into the arms of her confused and terrified children. The door swung shut, and all she could hear was the frantic, muffled shouting of the medical team and the relentless, soul-stealing sound of the flatline alarm.